It is Monday, October 20th, 2025. I'm meteorologist Brian Shields. Thank you for being part of this weather community. Watching this, all eyes on this, of course, trying to become Melissa. That is the next name on the list. Now, with it, there's a large area of rain. Some of us experienced that yesterday. Parts of Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, for example, St. Lucia, just to name a few spots, had some heavier rain. This is now right in the Caribbean Sea, Eastern Caribbean, and with that, we'll be tracking this. It's still moving rather quickly in the short term as it moves off toward the west. That'll prevent a little bit of development. Then it's going to slow down. When it slows down midweek, in particular Wednesday into Thursday, that's when it should start to develop. I'm still uncertain if it's going to shoot more to the north or more to the west, and I want to cover all of that, the possibilities, in this video, and we may need to go into action mode soon, so I appreciate you subscribing so you can get the updates. I'll put out some additional videos and you'll be able to get those notifications first. Now, watching this, here's a closer look. So here we are in Dominica, Martinique, St. Lucia, St. Vincent the Grenadines, heaviest stuff just off toward the west. Same thing in Grenada. Here we are in Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, still some rain and storms in Venezuela. Now, as this big blob works its way into the Eastern Caribbean, on the backside of it, we're still going to see some areas of rain as we go throughout the day, kind of hit or miss, but some of that could still be heavy. But this is the spot we're watching. No development in the very short term, but as it tracks off toward the west, I do expect it to develop further into a tropical storm and potentially a hurricane. Now, we are holding in monitor mode. We are not yet in action mode, but we are in monitor mode. Jamaica, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico, which means we're in a high alert and we're reviewing our hurricane plans, what we would need to do if we go into action mode. We may need to go into action mode soon, and that's why I mentioned if you subscribe, you'll get those alerts. If I see this trying to take a little bit more of a turn to the north, we'll go into action mode a bit sooner, and I'll really highlight that. I value your resources, your time, and again, right now, monitor mode, not yet in action mode, being very clear about that. Now, looking at where this may go, of course, that is the big issue. That makes sense. Now, in the short term, working its way off toward the west, and then it may take a curve back to the north. It's really hard this time of year with the fronts up to the north. You get all these fronts because it is autumn. We're late in hurricane season, so it's different from earlier in the hurricane season, which is actually a little bit easier to know the track on these things. There's a lot more going on this time of year. Short term to the west, and then what I'm watching to see is if it kind of feels these fronts up to the north. If it starts to develop a little bit sooner, it may start to kind of lift to the north. So Haiti, the Dominican Republic, even watching Puerto Rico, that's exactly why we are in monitor mode, and we may need to go into action mode. Jamaica, if this wiggles its way a little bit more toward the west, we're watching things very carefully to see how this evolves. Jamaica, of course, Cuba, Cayman Islands, watching everyone, Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, I got you covered. And if this goes more to the west, I'll be able to let you know with advance warning, Jamaica, parts of Cuba, potentially Cayman Islands, if we need to go into action mode. But it really hinges on these fronts up to the north. Now, the Google DeepMind, which has been doing a good job, this model right here, it's this dotted line, is insisting on this curve. It is almost 50-50, which is crazy. Usually there's kind of a lean. Usually there's more of a feel, yeah, maybe more this way, not so much this way, or vice versa. But as of now, it's really hard to tell because not only do we have the fronts up to the north, but the system hasn't developed yet. It's actually easier to track a developing storm, and I always let you know, what I don't know, what I'm struggling with the forecast. It's not easy. It's hard to forecast the weather in a typical pattern 3 days out, let alone tropical storms and hurricanes, as you well know. But the Google DeepMind does insist on this turn right in through here. That's why we're in that heightened alert from Puerto Rico back through Jamaica. We'll see if that does shake out just over the next day or two. Even sooner, I'll be able to get a good feel if it is going to be making that turn. And that's why I may need to put out that additional video to go into action mode. And this gives you a feel of that Google DeepMind showing that westerly track and then a turn somewhere either near Jamaica, potentially eventually Haiti and the Dominican Republic. With that said, the European model, which is typically a good model, it's not always right, but a good model, insists on this thing going more to the west. And that's why I mentioned I simply don't know. I'm always straightforward with you. I'm not sure yet on the track of this, so we're holding in monitor mode in spots, and then we'll see if we need to go into action mode. Now, as far as the strength goes, in the short term, because it's moving quickly, makes it a little bit harder to organize. And this is, these are showing the models. This is a day out, 2 days out, 3 days out. Eventually, though, it shows this. Most of the models have this becoming a hurricane as we get into about 3-4 days out later this week. This yellow shading in here, it has that strengthening. But I want to caution, as you well know, we saw this with Hurricane Aaron, Hurricane Beryl. I was able to give you the heads up. The intensity is the hardest thing with hurricanes all season long. It's very difficult because we've seen things rapidly intensify, but that is why I do this channel. If I see significant changes, my promise to you is I'll let you know right away, because we know we watch a lot in the atmosphere above our heads, the wind shear, all of that dry air. Earlier in the season we had the dust, but also what's going on at the surface. The water temperatures very warm, running at 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and the big concern is the heat content. This is what strengthened Aaron and Beryl, and I don't mean that in a scary way. I want you to know have all the information. The heat content is very high in here. That is that red shading in here, exactly where this area is moving. That means the water is warm, but also it's warm way down below. So if something just sits on top of that water, it's just churning up more warm water, and it really feeds these systems, in which they can rapidly intensify. But there's a lot of elements. It's not just this, but this is a concern. I do know that this area is moving right over that high heat content, so I'm watching that ever so carefully. Again, this is no doubt a high concern. Now, looking model by model what they're showing, and I want to show you some of the differences in some of the challenges with this area. The European model has this eventually just continuing to slow down and then move into the Western Caribbean, closer to Jamaica for us, as eventually a hurricane. Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico, Belize, Honduras, the islands throughout, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, keeping an eye on this, okay? So some spots I'm not mentioning as much as others. Know that I'm watching all locations, but the European model has this eventually becoming a hurricane early next week. We'd be still tracking this 6, 7, 8 days from now. It's a high anxiety time of year, but I'll be watching this every step of the way, and we'll be tracking this could be tracking this for quite a while. If that European model is right, again, as we work our way to next week, it could still be sitting here. The American model has it making a little bit of an earlier turn, developing into a hurricane in just a few days later this week. Now, with that said, the European model, which I'll show you, and the American model, most of the models eventually, even if they have it getting into the Western Caribbean, trying to lift up to the north. So I'm keeping an eye on the Gulf, the United States. It's not an apparent threat at this time, but if this eventually moves far enough west, we'll see if it does want to shoot to the north. So watching all locations to the north as well, especially this time of year with the fronts that could help kind of tug these areas up. The Canadian model's actually backed off. This would be better news. Yesterday was showing a hurricane, now more a tropical storm, but somewhere closer to Jamaica as we work our way into the end of the week. I like this scenario, not that we need a tropical storm near Jamaica, we know that, but with that, I like a weaker scenario. That's always some good news. So we'll see if this shakes out. That's the Canadian model. Here's the German Icon model. That is showing a hurricane later this week, somewhere in the Central Caribbean. So you see the differences, but all the models are developing this area into at least a tropical storm, a little bit more likely a hurricane, and then it's just a matter of if it gets tugged to the north. But that's what we'll be sorting out together just over the next couple of days. All right, let me show you the European model here. So here we are in the Caribbean. Here's Jamaica, Cuba, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Trinidad. High pressure's locked in. That's the fence. It's a blocker. So this area can't go to the north initially. So it's just kind of working its way off toward the west. Now, as we work our way into the middle of the week, and then even toward the end of the week, this is by Thursday. The European model does not have it make a quick turn. It just has it still working off to the west. So here's Jamaica. It shows a sloppy system, a developing tropical storm at this point. By Thursday, close to Haiti, close to Jamaica as this works to the west. And again, the European model is more of that westerly track with this. And then as we go out in time here by the upcoming weekend, look how this sucker is just sitting there, right? If the European model's correct, days and days of track. This also means days and days of rain, and these fronts back to the north, back toward the U.S., coming across Texas, these will be key to what happens down here. And then as we work our way into next week, this is a week from now, even more so. This is by Tuesday, not tomorrow Tuesday, but the following Tuesday, October 28th, showing a hurricane sitting somewhere in the Western Caribbean, keeping an eye on Central America, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, Cuba, and then these fronts up to the north. Will these fronts kind of pull this area up, or will this area work towards Central America? Wait and see on this, but this is a slower, indifferent scenario. The European model insisting this continuing for days and days, just working its way off to the west. It's not that one model's right or wrong, it's just very difficult with the pattern that we have now. Now this here is why I've been putting out additional videos. I mentioned subscribing, which I don't often ask. Love subscribers, but it's not about that. But I do want you to get the alerts, because the American model shows a quicker turn, right? So, and also keeping an eye on all of the rain, right? Costa Rica, Panama, we've got a lot of rain around. We've been highlighting for weeks the flooding, parts of Guatemala, over toward Nicaragua, El Salvador. But here we go. By tomorrow, very similar to the other models, right? The blob of rain starting to move closer. The ABC Islands watching us to see how close some of the rain gets. We'll be on the edge of some of the rain. Also, some of that rain starting to filter into the Dominican Republic. The rain chance is going to pick up Haiti, across the DR, back through Puerto Rico, regardless of how quickly this develops. So flooding is going to be a big concern. But by Wednesday, the American model already spins this up into a tropical storm. So we'll know soon if this model is going to be right, just filtering in some of the rain. Most of the action would be to the north of the ABC Islands, but Aruba, Curacao, and Bonaire, we'd be getting some heavier rain at times. But then it shows that lift to the north, Haiti and the Dominican Republic. The American model saying this is going to lift to the north as most likely a tropical storm or a hurricane, kind of get pulled by a front. Watching Puerto Rico for the potential of heavier rain as we get into Thursday, and then it just kind of becomes that sprawly system, tropical storm or hurricane, as this works to the north. But it is, you could see here the big differences, right? Tropical storm or hurricane right here, or hurricane sitting over here. Those are pretty big differences, which I don't like, because I want to give you the heads up. But that's why I will continue to watch this around the clock, so that I could give you the heads up if you need to protect life or property. And this is why I mentioned we may need to go into action mode. If I get that feel from what I'm seeing in the atmosphere that this will lift to the north sooner, we'll go into action mode in some spots a bit quicker. Now, as far as the winds go, this is based on that model I just showed you, the American model. Today, those winds really coming in out of the east. We're looking at some of the winds. I've got kilometers an hour and miles per hour on your screen. We'll have gusts over 50 kilometers an hour, over 30 miles per hour. But the American model shows this starting to spin up. This is tomorrow. It shows it already starting to develop. It's sometimes the American model, though, develops things too quickly. Models have biases. The American model typically develops things a little bit quicker, so we'll see. But it is showing that circulation by Wednesday, very close to Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and strengthening, even a little red in there, which would be winds of 110 kilometers an hour, 70 miles per hour, with a developing hurricane. We'll see if this is right. But again, the European model has this in the same spot, but weaker, and then drifting more off toward the west. Now, it is tied to this. It's amazing how the weather's tied together. These fronts, 1, 2, 3, they play a factor as to what happens down here, because if these fronts are strong enough and timed out in a way, they could help kind of lift this area to the north. These are the challenges that I'm having for us in the Caribbean. You see these fronts that are passing by. We'll see if they kind of tug this area, but watching some of the rain, Ontario, Quebec, back through the Great Lakes, new systems that will be coming in. This here is Wednesday to give you a feel. Atlantic region of Canada, at least the Maritimes, seeing a better chance of rain. New Brunswick by the time we get deeper into Wednesday. Great Lakes staying active, but these fronts, we'll see how they play into what's going on right down here to see if they kind of give this area an alleyway to lift to the north. Again, if you have the fronts here, you don't have high pressure. You have these troughs that could allow these areas to lift up to the north. So it shows you how the weather is tied together from Canada, the U.S., back through the Caribbean. Now, the next name on the list is Melissa. It looks likely at this time that this area will develop into Melissa. That is the next name. Nestor after that, then Olga as we get down the road. Now, the seas are going to be a mess. Of course, the Atlantic passageways watching the eastern and central Caribbean. The seas are only going to get worse. Everything's going to be building. Even if this is slower to develop, we've got a strong tropical disturbance riding through. So it makes sense that those seas will be building. Tuesday into Wednesday, everything gets elevated. Jamaica will be seeing those swells starting to build. Eastern side as we work our way into the middle of the week. Southern coast, watching over toward Jacmel, back toward Santo Domingo as we get back from Haiti, across the Dominican Republic. Southern and west coast of Puerto Rico, those seas really building as we work our way through midweek, regardless of which track this takes. Now, as far as rain goes, scattered areas of rain, not a whole lot as we swing back toward parts of the Gulf over toward the states, watching Florida, hit or miss as we swing back toward South Florida, back through the Bahamas, more so southern Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, scattered areas of rain and storms. This here is all dependent on what happens, of course, with what could become Melissa. But if this starts to lift to the north, we are going to see substantial totals of rain, let alone winds, but rain in Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. And that's why I mentioned we may have to go into action mode, and then we'll see how close this gets toward Jamaica, and keeping an eye on Cuba. Got you covered. So this is the area we'll be watching over the next few days. I'm not seeing anything trying to build this back towards Ceiba, Statia, St. Kitts and Nevis, over toward Anguilla, St. Martin, and St. Bart's. But if this does take an earlier turn, that could eventually drag in some more moisture for us in the northeastern Caribbean, with the tropical disturbance now in the Caribbean. On the backside of it, still some rain at times, but it's going to be one of those scenarios. One island may not get a whole lot, another island may get a lot as we go through the day. So scattered areas of rain, but where we get it, it will be heavy. Watching out for isolated areas of flooding. I've been mentioning northeastern Venezuela, northern Guyana, northern Suriname, better chance of rain. Here's still some of that rain I mentioned yesterday. Eastern Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, flooding a likelihood in some spots with high totals of 150 millimeters of rain for 3-day totals, or 6 inches of rain, not related to this tropical wave. And watching out for that flood potential. Even southern Belize, that rain chance starting to pick up. Not as much around Mexico City, Texas. We're looking pretty good, as we are as well into the southwest portions of the U.S. And mainly drying through here. Most of the fronts are mainly sitting up to the north. That's where most of the action is. So Jamaica, our rain chance holding at 50%. If we get a shower or storm, it could be on the heavier side. We are in monitor mode together across Jamaica. If we need to go into action mode, I'll let you know, and we'll have plenty of time to make preparations if we need to get to that point. Same thing in the Cayman Islands. We're running at about a 40 to 50% chance of scattered areas of rain and storms. Backside of the tropical disturbance, still the elevated chance of rain for us. Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, we're looking at about a 40% chance of rain. Most of the action is off to the east, but St. Lucia, a 60% chance. Again, some of us may not get a lot, but others still dealing with some of the rain. Grenada, we're looking at a 60% chance today and a 50% chance for tomorrow. We do that again. St. Vincent the Grenadines, heaviest stuff. The big blob is now just to the west, but we're still going to see that moisture trying to filter in. So Martinique, for example, a 60% chance of rain. Dominica, a 60% chance today, down to a 40% chance for tomorrow, and a 50% chance as we go throughout the day ahead in Guadeloupe. We swing back through Antigua, Barbuda, rain chance kind of low. Not to say we can't see a few showers. St. Kitts and Nevis, Montserrat, rain chance about 30 to 40%, 20 to 30% chance the next 3 days. Anguilla, St. Bart's, but again, the seas are going to all be elevated in most spots. St. Martin, Ceiba, and Statia, 30% chance of a passing shower today. 40% chance the next couple of days in Puerto Rico. All eyes on, of course, what is just to the south, what is trying to develop as it moves a little bit closer to Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Rain chance up to 40% tomorrow. U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Bahamas, mainly southern Bahamas, better chance of getting some of the rain. Not that we can't get some northern and central Bahamas. Turks and Caicos, rain chances on the higher side, a 50% chance. The Dominican Republic, we are in monitor mode. We may go into action mode soon. That rain chance, it's only going to get higher regardless of the track. The rain chance in Haiti and the Dominican Republic getting higher. Very concerned about the mudslide threat. We're going to be fine-tuning this as we go forward across Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Belize, I mentioned southern sections, rain chance on the elevated side. Overall, it's bumping up a 50 to 60% chance. Aruba, Curacao, and Bonaire, really dependent on what's going on. By the time we get into tomorrow and Wednesday, we're going to see that higher chance of rain. We'll see how it shakes out together. I've been giving you the heads up across the ABC Islands of that better chance of rain, but it could either be just to the north or we'll get some decent rain. Guyana, rain chance, northern sections, a 60% chance. The next 2 days, northern sections of Suriname, about a 50% chance. Cuba, keeping an eye on this tropical disturbance very carefully. Costa Rica, Panama, rain chance, as I mentioned, on the high side, 80%, 60 to 70% chance favoring eastern sections of Nicaragua. Honduras, rain chance will be bumping up as the week goes on. 70% chance today, Guatemala and El Salvador. It does go down a little bit, but still watching out for the flooding in some of those dangerous rivers. Mexico City, we are looking good across the Yucatan Peninsula, though. Scattered areas of rain, and of course, monitoring that tropical disturbance. Northern Colombia, 60 to 70% chance. Northern Venezuela, upwards of an 80% chance of rain over the next couple days. And Bermuda, finally, while there's still some gusty winds and we still have some higher seas, rain chance on the low side. So monitor mode for now, but action mode likely coming soon for some of us. Significant areas of rain and flooding regardless of the development. We've got a big tropical disturbance in parts of the Caribbean, so we'll be tracking those big areas of rain, keeping an eye on those fronts to the north. I mentioned how it's tied together to see if anything does get pulled to the north. So thank you for your patience. We'll be tracking this nonstop together. Thank you for being part of this weather community, and have a really good day ahead.